Tesla didn't just lose billions in market value, it lost control of the narrative. This wasn't merely a car company. It was once the most captivating story Wall Street ever told. Fueled by Elon Musk's bold promises and unwavering investor faith, Tesla soared beyond any automaker in history. But everything changed when Donald Trump returned to the White House. Tesla's fairy tale didn't just fade, it imploded. Within months, its stock plummeted, wiping out nearly half its value and billions in investor wealth overnight. This wasn't a panic. It was a stampede. Hedge funds raced for the exit. Major institutions dumped shares, and Musk's ambitious vision began unraveling into a Wall Street nightmare. How could one political shift destabilize the world's largest electric vehicle empire? Was Tesla's billion-dollar brand built on illusion? And why are global governments suddenly distancing themselves from Musk? Keep watching, because what's unfolding isn't just a corporate failure. It's an economic shockwave. The customer exodus tells its own story. People didn't just hesitate, they ran. The plunging stock price was only the surface. Beneath it, a more alarming trend emerged: a mass abandonment of the brand by its once loyal customers. Tesla's sales in China, once its most profitable market, plunged nearly 50% in just a few months. In Europe, the numbers dropped by 45%. In the United States, the company's once dominant grip on the EV market weakened as consumers increasingly distanced themselves from Musk's empire. This wasn't a minor slump, it was a full-blown rebellion. The reasons were clear. For years, Tesla relied on a strategy of aggressive price cuts and minimal updates to its existing lineup. But instead of drawing in more buyers, the tactic backfired. Falling prices weren't seen as deals. They were seen as warning signs that Tesla's vehicles were losing their value. Quality concerns began to surface. At the same time, rivals like General Motors, Ford, Hyundai, and BYD rolled out electric vehicles with better technology and more competitive pricing. Yet Tesla's financial missteps were only part of the unraveling. The brand's image had taken a massive hit. What was once seen as a cutting-edge, eco-conscious status symbol was now viewed as a political flashpoint. Musk's controversial endorsements, unpredictable social media antics, and close alignment with polarizing political figures turned the brand toxic for many former supporters. Across American cities, Tesla dealerships faced protests from disillusioned customers. In Europe, the backlash was even more intense. Tesla wasn't just losing customers, it was losing true believers. And as buyers walked away, something even more telling was happening behind closed doors. Tesla's own leadership was jumping ship. But before we dive into that, take a second to hit the subscribe button. It's quick, easy, and it really helps us out. Now let's talk about the insider panic, the quiet storm that signaled deep trouble. When the people closest to a company start bailing, it's a clear sign the ship might be sinking. As customers turned their backs, a troubling pattern emerged within Tesla's top ranks. Kimball Musk, Elon's own brother and longtime board member, sold off millions in Tesla shares. The company's chief financial officer followed suit, discreetly offloading large portions of stock. Other board members and high-level executives, once vocal defenders of Musk's vision, either stepped down or began cashing out. This wasn't a few individuals making routine financial decisions. It was a wave of exits, a coordinated, calculated retreat masked by public reassurances. Behind the scenes, confidence was crumbling. And the market noticed. Institutional investors, hedge funds, mutual funds, and big-name firms that had once championed Tesla's future started scaling back. Some slipped out quietly. Others made headlines. But they all seemed to agree. If the insiders were losing faith, why should they stay? In any corporate downfall, insider sell-offs are the early warning signs. They're the canary in the coal mine. And as more Tesla insiders jumped ship, Wall Street analysts stopped wondering when the stock would rebound. Instead, they started asking if Tesla could survive at all. They started asking if Tesla would survive. But it wasn't just investors walking away. The public backlash was about to erupt. The death of investor faith marked a turning point. Tesla's stock wasn't the only thing collapsing. So was the dream. For more than a decade, Wall Street had treated Tesla as an exception. Analysts gave it a pass on missed deadlines, production delays, and outlandish promises, all because they believed in the bigger vision. That belief, however, crumbled under mounting evidence. Tesla's core financials were faltering. Sales had dropped across all major markets. Production costs were climbing. Regulatory probes into its self-driving tech cast a dark shadow over its future. Every damaging headline chipped away at the carefully crafted narrative Musk had spent years promoting. Large institutional investors who once funneled billions into Tesla began retreating. Hedge funds and pension managers quietly cut their exposure. Even the retail investors, those passionate supporters who had once rallied for Tesla on forums and social media, started to bail, disillusioned by financial losses and the growing negativity surrounding the brand. For the first time in years, Tesla was no longer seen as a high-growth innovator, but a high-risk gamble. Analysts downgraded the stock to sell. The tone on Wall Street shifted dramatically, from glowing endorsements to cautious warnings. Earnings. Calls turned from visionary optimism to pointed skepticism. And the collapse of investor confidence didn't just tank the stock. It shattered belief in Tesla's long-term potential. The dream of Tesla's leading the EV market, pioneering autonomous driving and revolutionizing global transportation, had been fractured. With investors pulling out, the money dried up. But something even more volatile was brewing. Public outrage. Protests began erupting in the streets, not scattered, but organized. Across North America and Europe, Tesla showrooms transformed into flashpoints. From New York to Toronto, from Berlin to Paris, furious crowds gathered in growing numbers. This wasn't just a consumer boycott. It was a full-blown movement, and it was no longer operating in the shadows. Tesla's front doors were no longer just entryways. They became stages for public shame. What began as scattered frustrations quickly transformed into a calculated, organized uprising. In major cities, demonstrators held mock Tesla funerals. Black coffins were paraded into Tesla showrooms, with attendees dressed in mourning clothes, holding candles and chanting in unison, "Rest in peace, sustainability." The symbolism was clear. Tesla, once hailed as a beacon of innovation and hope, was now seen by many as a fallen idol. These weren't random agitators. Many of the protesters were former Tesla owners, early adopters who once waited in long lines for the Model S or Model 3, proudly aligning themselves with a brand that stood for environmental progress. Now, those same loyalists stood in protest, accusing Elon Musk of betraying the very ideals that had built the company. Environmental groups soon joined the demonstrations. Activists who had once championed Tesla's clean energy mission now marched under banners that read, "You sold out." Their outrage wasn't just about recent pricing strategies or product decisions. It ran deeper. It was about Elon Musk's shift toward divisive politics and rhetoric. To them, Tesla had morphed from a climate crusader into, in their words, a symbol of authoritarian ambition. The protests escalated. Demonstrators stormed Tesla showrooms, blocking entrances, lying across display floors, and shouting political and slogans. "Do not test drive fascism," read a sign in Los Angeles. In Berlin, protesters chained themselves to the dealership doors. In Montreal, a group occupied a Tesla showroom for hours, refusing to leave until the media arrived. This wasn't just a temporary wave of anger, it was a full-blown movement, and while the protests grabbed headlines, a quieter, more dangerous battle was unfolding behind the scenes. What followed wasn't just unrest, it was sabotage. As public demonstrations spread, a darker force emerged. Tesla was no longer facing only chants and signs, it was facing fire. In Massachusetts, a Tesla supercharger station at the Point Shopping Center in Littleton was engulfed in flames. Thick black smoke rose into the sky as fire consumed multiple charging stalls. Investigators later confirmed what many feared. It was arson. Before the fire department could even finish filing its report, another supercharger nearby was torched, destroying 7 charging bays. Tesla owners scrambled to find alternatives, only to discover other stations had been vandalized or rendered inoperable. The attacks weren't isolated. In France, 12 Tesla vehicles were found burned to the ground, deliberately torched, according to authorities. In Germany, 10 more Teslas were destroyed in similar fashion within days. These acts came without slogans or statements, just coordinated destruction and silence. The chilling precision of these attacks rattled the Tesla community. Owners began avoiding certain areas, afraid their vehicles would make them targets. The Cybertruck, once the bold symbol of Tesla's next era, became a rolling bullseye. Reports surfaced of Cybertruck drivers being harassed at charging stations, their tires slashed, their vehicles keyed. What had started as a brand revolution was now spiraling into something far more dangerous. Open hostility, fear, and the crumbling of a once invincible image. Tesla, for its part, scrambled to contain the damage. The company vowed to replace damaged superchargers within 48 hours, installed floodlights at charging stations, and added layers of surveillance cameras. But it wasn't enough. The real damage wasn't just physical, it was psychological. Trust had been shattered. Owners began to question, is it even safe to drive this car anymore? But while the flames consumed charging stations and protest chants echoed through city streets, the most devastating blow didn't come from vandalism. It came from the internet. Beneath the smoke, a digital war was quietly escalating, and Tesla was losing it fast. The Tesla takedown movement wasn't led by rival automakers or foreign governments. It was led by the very people who had once propelled the brand to cult status: early adopters, former superfans, and once loyal investors. The epicenter of this rebellion, a website called TeslaAcheDown.com. What had started as a small blog by a disillusioned investor had evolved into a full-scale campaign aimed at dismantling Tesla's image and financial standing. This wasn't just angry venting. It was strategic, methodical sabotage. The site's mission was clear: destroy Tesla's reputation and collapse its financial foundation by targeting one of its weakest links, the resale market. Visitors were urged to list their Teslas online at dramatically low prices, flooding the market. Make resale values collapse, the site instructed. And it worked. The ripple effect was brutal. As used Tesla prices tanked, demand for new vehicles followed. A brand once known for cutting-edge innovation now risked becoming a symbol of regret. On YouTube, TikTok, and Reddit, creators posted videos explaining why they were dumping their Teslas. Some peeled off their logos on camera. Others filmed themselves, towing perfectly functioning Teslas to junkyards, calling it a necessary sacrifice. Hashtags like "Mine Dump Musk," "My Boycott Tesla," and "Never Again" exploded across platforms. Influencers with millions of followers cut ties with the brand. Live streamers openly mocked Musk. Even ex-Tesla engineers began leaking documents anonymously, suggesting the company's once-vaunted tech was falling behind competitors. The movement gained momentum, and it worked. Tesla's resale values plummeted. Demand for new models shrank. Media coverage intensified. And finally, Wall Street took notice. Investors who had once dismissed online outrage as background noise began to ask the question that once seemed unthinkable. How do you sell a product when nobody wants to be seen driving it? At the heart of all this chaos was one man, Elon Musk. Not merely reacting to the crisis, but many believe fueling it. The Musk effect had turned from genius to liability. Once celebrated as a visionary set to launch humanity into the stars, Musk had become a lightning rod of controversy. It started subtly, a provocative tweet here, a combative podcast appearance there. But over time, the perception of Musk shifted. No longer the eccentric innovator, he was now seen as a polarizing billionaire whose public behavior was dragging his own empire into freefall. Then came the breaking point: Musk's open endorsement of Donald Trump. The backlash was swift and brutal. Tesla's core demographic, progressive, environmentally conscious, tech-savvy buyers, were blindsided. In California, Tesla's biggest U.S. market, approval ratings plummeted. Surveys revealed trust in Musk among left-leaning consumers fell by over 50%. In Europe, it was even more dire. Favorability ratings for Musk in Germany and France dropped into the low 20s, down from over 70% just a few years earlier. But the fallout wasn't just reputational, it was financial. Liberal investors began to pull out. ESG, environmental, social, and governance funds, once proud to back Tesla, started moving capital to competitors like Rivian, BYD, and Hyundai. For the first time, Tesla wasn't being judged by the strength of its innovation, but by the consequences of its founders' politics. and the markets were punishing it. Mutual fund managers no longer wanted Tesla in their ESG portfolios, those once proudly committed to environmental, social, and governance principles. Even within the company, tensions were rising. Leaked memos and internal chatter revealed a growing discomfort among employees. Some began questioning if Musk's increasingly political behavior was worth the reputational and financial cost. Others didn't bother to wait for an answer. They simply walked away. The brand was unraveling, and the common thread wasn't competition or innovation missteps. It was Elon Musk himself. Musk had made Tesla inseparable from his identity. And, in doing so, he tied its fortunes directly to his behavior. Every tweet wasn't just a message. It was a market risk. Every political endorsement triggered another wave of public backlash. Each defiant interview cost Tesla more goodwill, more customers, and more market share. What started as personal branding became a political liability. And the fallout didn't stop with Wall Street or public opinion. It escalated to the halls of power. The US government's crackdown on Tesla marked a stunning reversal. The same federal system that once hailed Tesla as the poster child of clean transportation had turned against it. Under President Donald Trump's second administration, EV subsidies were slashed. Federal incentives, once tailored to support Tesla's growth, were redirected to legacy automakers like General Motors and Ford, now hailed as the real heroes of American industry. The message was clear. Tesla was no longer part of the national electric dream. Musk's political alignment with Trump didn't shield him from consequences. It made him a political lightning rod. Lawmakers began treating Tesla not as a partner in progress, but as a threat to oversight and accountability. Regulatory scrutiny intensified, and the company's once celebrated full self-driving feature came under federal investigation. With more high-profile crashes making headlines, the government demanded answers. Tesla's marketing claims, long accused of overselling futuristic capabilities, were now evidence in a growing pile of lawsuits. Families of crash victims sued, arguing that Musk's promises had directly led to tragedy. These legal battles mounted quickly. Tesla was dragged into courtrooms across the country, where depositions, legal fees, and settlements drained the company's already strained cash reserves. Meanwhile, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and other agencies turned their attention to Tesla's build quality. Reports of panel misalignments, battery issues, and buggy software updates triggered new rounds of oversight. Suddenly, every vehicle delivery required more inspections, slowing operations, and inflating costs. What was once a nimble disruptor was now a target of bureaucracy and regulation. Investors watched nervously as the winds shifted. The administration's public statements made it clear. Tesla was out of favor. Government support, once a key pillar of Tesla's rise, had vanished. With no tax breaks, fewer incentives, and tightening oversight, Tesla was bleeding from every angle. Confidence plummeted. Wall Street started asking how long the company could endure in this new political climate. But if the US government's quiet, cold shoulder was devastating, what happened next overseas would be catastrophic. Because just as Tesla reeled from American rejection, another superpower was preparing to pull the plug, and this time, there would be no coming back. China was about to strike. When Tesla Incorporated collapsed in the United States of America, it didn't just lose a market, it lost the foundation of its global identity. The collapse was not contained. It spread fast, and the fallout was devastating. As confidence in the company evaporated, other countries quickly followed suit. What had been seen as a global symbol of innovation and progress was now viewed with suspicion, skepticism, and in some cases, outright hostility. In Canada, the government quietly pulled back on incentives once aimed at boosting Tesla sales. Those subsidies were redirected toward Canadian and non-US electric vehicle manufacturers. Provinces like Quebec and British Columbia, where Tesla once thrived, recorded sharp drops in Model 3 and Model Y registrations. Environmental activists, who had once championed Tesla, began publicly calling for divestment. The tone had shifted completely. Tesla was no longer seen as a solution, but as a symptom of something broken. In Australia and New Zealand, car buyers reacted swiftly to the avalanche of bad press coming out of North America and Europe. Insurance. Companies raised premiums on Tesla vehicles, citing high repair costs and growing vandalism claims. Banks became wary, tightening lending criteria for Tesla purchases. On the ground, dealers reported an influx of trade-in requests and a sharp dip in inquiries. Buyers who once placed deposits months in advance were now walking away from orders. Chinese and Korean brands like BYD and Hyundai filled the vacuum, offering EVs with comparable range, better warranty programs, and none of the political baggage. India, once seen as Tesla's next great frontier, slammed the door shut. After years of negotiations, government officials cited compatibility issues and a reassessment of strategic alignment as they officially ended talks. Tesla's refusal to manufacture locally had already caused friction, but the company's global decline sealed the deal. Instead, India doubled down on homegrown manufacturers like Tata and Mahindra. Musk's name, once seen as an asset, had become a liability. Latin America also pulled back. In Mexico, Brazil, Chile, and Argentina, Tesla's high-end image became a target. Protesters showed up at dealerships in Mexico City. In São Paulo, social media campaigns urged wealthy buyers to support ethical innovation. Instead, dealers struggled to move inventory. Importers reported cancelled orders and steep resale losses. Meanwhile, EV alternatives from BYD and European brands saw a surprising uptick in interest, aided by better pricing, longer warranties, and political neutrality. Financial markets responded in kind. Global hedge funds offloaded Tesla stock in waves. Major banks began distancing themselves from the company, refusing to finance expansion loans or support large-scale dealership projects. ESG funds removed Tesla from their sustainability portfolios. Analysts in Tokyo, Zurich, and Singapore shifted their attention to competitors, issuing reports that declared Tesla unreliable, over-leveraged, and reputationally toxic. Africa and the Middle East, while never Tesla's strongest regions, had represented future growth. That future vanished. In South Africa, Elon Musk's own birthplace, media coverage became increasingly critical. In Dubai, talks of electric supercar partnerships dissolved. Governments began collaborating with Chinese EV firms instead. The consensus was clear. Tesla had become too volatile to trust. Even in parts of Asia where Tesla once had strong momentum, like Japan and South Korea, buyers became cautious. Consumer forums filled with posts warning against the brand. Tech-savvy customers, who had once celebrated Tesla's futuristic appeal, now voiced doubts about software reliability and after-sales service. A new narrative had emerged. Tesla was no longer cutting edge. It was just another risk. What started as protests in front of dealerships had grown into a full-scale global retreat. Customers left. Governments turned their backs. Markets collapsed. And still, at the center of it all, was Elon Musk, tweeting, provoking, polarizing. Every move he made seemed to fuel the fire. Tesla had become inseparable from the man who built it, and when his image crumbled, so did the empire. By the end, Tesla wasn't just losing markets. It was being erased from conversations where it once led. The electric vehicle revolution carried on, but without the brand that had once defined it. The world had moved on, and Tesla was left in the shadows of what it could have been. The situation between China and Europe triggered widespread disruption throughout the global supply chain. Battery manufacturers, many of whom had relied on consistent orders from Elon Musk's factories, were suddenly forced to seek new clients or scale down their operations. Tech stocks connected to the electric vehicle sector experienced volatile swings as investors grew increasingly skeptical of any company that resembled the embattled automaker. Meanwhile, policymakers in several countries began reassessing their support for autonomous driving, wary of the political consequences of backing a controversial brand. Trade tensions also emerged as nations debated how to handle imported electric vehicles. Countries that had once welcomed Tesla, incorporated with open arms, began to introduce stricter certification requirements, often citing safety or environmental concerns. The company, unable to regain its former momentum, began to flounder. The prestige Elon Musk had built over more than a decade seemed to disappear almost overnight.